Welcome back to Light the Fuse, your one-stop shop for everything Mission Impossible. And we're not going to talk that much, but we've got a fun show today. What we are doing is we are combining our three-part Brad Bird conversation into a single super episode in celebration of the 10th anniversary of Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Did I get that right, Charles?
Yes, that is correct. We've repackaged this Brad Bird interview. It's one of our best interviews. I mean, this is just such an awesome chat that we have. Looking back at some of our notes from this, I was just struck by a few things. Like Brad Bird wanted Ethan Hunt to have a broken leg at the end of the movie. I had totally forgotten about that. I also love how he referred to the car park finale as like a nasty Harold Lloyd sequence. That's just so great.
I feel like that sequence is underrated. Can we just talk about that?
Oh, yeah, it is. I think even if you go back and listen to our very first episode about Ghost Protocol, I think I probably was underrating it even then. Or I was saying in rewatching, I remember, suddenly I was like, oh, wow, this sequence is better than I remembered. I think that's maybe what I said in our very first episode about it.
It's so good.
Because I think I wrote it off in theaters. It's just so hard when you do the Dubai sequence.
And don't you think it's a little diluted by kind of cutting between the stuff in the satellite office or whatever and that?
I don't know. I guess so, but that to me that was like the first time a Mission movie did that.
Yeah,
and I appreciate that because the others, the 1, 2, and 3 kind of lose one kind of you. I mean, Luther's there on the train with a laptop, but he's not really doing that much. But like the 2 and 3 and even 1, like they don't include the team members.
Right.
And that's something that obviously Fallout did better than any of the other movies.
Yeah.
Is having the whole team, put to good use in trying to save the day. And I appreciate that side of it, but maybe it does take away from the sequence itself. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, it rules. Yeah.
It's also like Brad Bird was saying how breaking Cruz out of jail was like a metaphor for his career at the time, which I forgot about, which I think is so great. And then of course the hat, the Mission Impossible crew hat with the 4 dots. Before they had a title. We actually have that hat now that we talk about in this episode. Thanks to the generosity of Seth Worley, who is a listener of the show. We actually went on his podcast to come up with a pitch for a totally insane Mission Impossible movie. That's the Writer's Room game show if you want to look it up. But that was a fun show that we did. And thank you to Seth.
What was our movie called? Meltdown?
I think it was Mission Impossible Meltdown. That's what it was called. It's good. So you should check that out. It's totally ridiculous and fun and funny. And so thank you to Seth. We have that hat, which is just so great. We'll put it in our show notes so you can check it out. It's also interesting looking back at this because it was the start of our quest to find out everything about the snowmobile sequence and how they were going to use Vanessa Redgrave as Max in the movie. So we've come so far and dug so deep since then.
Yeah, I mean, seeing Paula Patton in the costume was pretty unbelievable. That was very harrowing.
Yeah.
Like, man, we almost got it. It was so close. But anyway, we will continue to ask every single person associated with this movie about the snowmobile chase.
Yeah. But happy holidays, everybody, and do your favorite part of the show. Let's get this thing going.
Oh, okay. Here are my shout-outs for this week. Jeremy Dillon and his podcast, My Favorite Album, which is really amazing. And he's done this great sort of audio documentary about the making of David Byrne's American Utopia stage play. And obviously, John B. I got to give a shout out to John B. So, yeah, that's it. And we'll be back to wrap things up at the end, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, welcome back to Light the Fuse, and we are so thrilled to have our very special guest, 2-time Oscar winner, current Oscar nominee, perhaps 3-time Oscar winner by the time this comes out.
Oh, I wouldn't count on it.
We are joined by Mr. Brad Bird. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We love Ghost Protocol. Obviously, the name of the show is Light the Fuse.
There you go.
So
we saw.
We started that.
You started that.
We've
not like they've ever done it again. But.
The moment we became obsessed with this franchise was that moment, I think.
Oh, yeah.
We saw it in IMAX at the Lincoln Square AMC
Oh, cool.
in New
Yeah,
York.
we saw it the same day you did your talk at Lincoln Center.
Yeah, we went to that talk. I actually went with him for that.
Yeah. So could you talk about that opening sequence?
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the cool things about working on that is it kind of ties into how I got involved in it. After Incredibles, Tom Cruise asked to talk with me and invited me over to his place. And I just went over there and we just talked about movies for like 2 or 3 hours. And his knowledge was extensive. I mean, it was a lot of times you talk to people and their knowledge of film goes back maybe 10 or 15 years. And we were talking about stuff from the silent era, and he could talk about Harold Lloyd and know what he was talking about, and I love that. And he just said that he really liked Incredibles and Iron Giant, and that if I ever wanted to do a live action film, he wanted to work with me, and I said absolutely, I'd love to make one with you. I mean, he has an amazing body of work that I think people kind of forget how many really good films he's been in, and been really good in. And so fast forward, I'm finished with Ratatouille. I'm trying to get this project called 1906 off the ground. And just the project is this massive and complicated thing. And I look up and I haven't cracked it yet. And 2 years have gone by. And I'm starting to go, I can't have on my gravestone, he worked on 1906. So I thought, I gotta do a movie. I want to do a live action movie. I've been wanting to do one for a long time, and I've got to just make it happen. So I looked around and at what, I'd been offered things over the years and couldn't do them because I was involved in the animated films. And so I kind of looked around at what was available, and JJ had been talking to me too previous to that, and talked about certain films that I wasn't able to do. And I went down to Bad Robot with Michael Giacchino, who did Lost with JJ and Alias, and JJ ran into us there, and he said, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I'm actually kind of looking for stuff. And that night when I came back from LA, I got this little text from JJ that just said mission ? And I thought, yeah, that's cool. And the reason I thought it was cool was that of all the franchises, which is kind of what, if you like to work on a big scale, the films that are gassed up and ready to go are franchise films. Those are the ones the studio has confidence in. They're not going to give you some oddball project that's really
right,
different from everything they've done. They're going to do the ones that they have confidence in. So of all the franchises that I was looking at, that was the one that was most intriguing to me, because at that point anyway, it was the only franchise that adapted to different directors' styles. They weren't trying to impose a house style on a director. The Brian De Palma one was very different from the John Woo one, which would never be mistaken as the JJ one, which is different from mine. And the fact that they wanted each director to have a different style, given that, it's going to be a spy movie that's going to have Tom Cruise and a team of IMF agents. But other than that, you could kind of make your movie, you know what I mean? And I like that. I like that it embraced the different styles of the filmmakers, whereas other franchises didn't. They told you, this is our stunt team and this is our da-da-da, and you just are kind of in there to direct traffic,
Right.
So it happened sort of that way. And one of the things that was cool is they said, do you have anything that you really want to see in a spy movie? And I said, oh yeah, I have a bunch of things, And they said, now's your opportunity, basically. And of the 6 or 7 things that I suggested, I got to do all but one of them. And one of the things that I wanted to do was pay tribute to the TV series titles. And one of the things that was cool about the titles, besides the fact that the fuse is burning all the time, is that they showed you bits of the episode you were about to see. But because they were scrambled out of order, even though you're seeing stuff from the episode that you haven't seen yet, it's not a spoiler because it's out of context. And it just becomes intriguing. You're just like, oh, this is in there, that's in there, I want to see this. So I thought, is there a way to do that that's updated? And I thought of following the fuse and having the fuse dimensionally take you through different scenes. And originally it was going to be more than what we wound up with. When we first started shooting, all of that stuff was going to be in IMAX. And what the plan was is once you finish shooting a scene on a set, you have everybody do part of that scene, but with a completely different camera move that rushes through that set. And it was all going to be shot in IMAX. And we only ended up shooting like 3 of them because the IMAX cameras are huge and you have to get a running start with them in order to move them quickly through a space. And it just became too hard. Now, if I was smart, I would have shot it in VistaVision or something that's not cumbersome, and I would have been more casual and just done it on every set and then later figured out how to wind the fuse through there. But we shot like 3 or 4 of them in IMAX, and then it became more about getting the concept to the title house because the schedule was too crazy to effectively do that for everything. But the idea was good. And so when we got to the end of it, I just said to the title guys that the idea is that the fuse is going to lead us through every scene in the film. And instead of being flat, we're going to follow the fuse as it snakes through the scenes of the movie. And so they took that idea and ran with it. And it was fun. All of the previous Mission Impossibles, there's a thing that kicks in that you can't show more than 1 or 2 titles, which is usually the company name and the title of the film, without triggering a union requirement to show all the major department leads. And so I said, well, why hasn't it been done before? This is like one of the greatest theme songs in the history of movies or television, period. And they said, well, we didn't want to go through a whole title sequence. And I thought, why the hell not? I mean, you've got this amazing theme song and let it roll, So Giacchino was excited about that because he loves the theme song. And we just said, yeah, let's trigger everybody's titles and do a big title sequence. And then it became, well, we're going to do that. Can we set it up? Can we set it up and have them packing, explosives in the opening, and then that's the thing that they're lighting the fuse for, and you end the sequence with an explosion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing title sequence. What did you want to ask about Kyle Cooper?
Well, so did you bring back Kyle Cooper from the first movie? He did the title sequence for the first movie?
I didn't know that.
Really?
No, we just picked him because he was great. Maybe somebody suggested him knowing that.
Yeah.
But we looked at 3 or 4 places and they had the coolest reel. So we just said, these guys, yeah, they did a great job on it.
Yeah. It seems like there was a concerted effort sort of to honor the first movie in some way. At least Paul Hirsch, the editor, came back.
Well, yes.
I don't know if that wasn't.
I knew that Paul did it, and I thought he did a great job on it. But I was also honoring the editing of Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back,
right.
And Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Ray, and I mean he has an unbelievable resume.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's an editor whose work I'd always admired, and his range I admired. The fact that he could do a comedy and then a suspense film and then the sci-fi fantasies of Star Wars, and he was a delight to work with.
But there did seem to be more callbacks, at least at some point. I mean, we've seen a script where Vanessa Redgrave's character is actually in the movie. And I'm assuming that's why you brought the henchman guy back.
And we thought we were going to get her, so we were setting that up.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, how close did that come?
Well, Our friends at Paramount did not want to pay Vanessa Redgrave
Okay.
what Vanessa Redgrave rightly deserves.
Right.
And so after teeing up Vanessa Redgrave, we couldn't get Vanessa Redgrave. And I was bummed, and Tom was bummed. And I felt like in the first Mission Impossible movie, the scenes between Vanessa Redgrave's character and Tom's character were some of the best scenes in the movie. And they had this weird flirty byplay
Yeah.
that was flirty and sexy without you believing that they're necessarily going to wind up in bed.
Yeah.
Like they're attractive to each other.
Yes.
But in a way that's really sophisticated. And I think she's a magnificent actress. And I was like licking my chops to be able to work with her just because I admire her work so much. And I was really bummed when they didn't do it. Yet I think our solution that we came up with worked all right.
Yeah, The Fog.
The Fog.
Yeah.
Which was a Chris McQuarrie name.
Well, I was going to ask you sort of what was your relationship with...
I'm sorry for all the mowing going on.
Because it seems like the script went through a pretty radical change. I mean, the script that you signed on to was not the movie you made, necessarily.
No.
We've heard talks about like a big snow fight and a secondary team taking over towards the end and all this stuff.
I don't know about the secondary team part. I don't. I just know that there was a giant sequence that opened the movie that Tom was not in. And it was going to have the Josh Holloway character, and it was a big sequence. It was on the snow, and it had snowmobiles and this really crazy notion of somebody is trying to basically kill themselves so that they don't give up the information, so they poison themselves. And one of the characters like reaches into the heart and keeps the heart going to get the information out of him and saying, I can keep you as alive as long as it takes to get the information, and I'm not going to let you die. Yeah. Oh, it was intense. And I kind of liked it. You know, I thought this is really crazy and it could be very intense. And it was on the ice, and the ice was going to crack and all this stuff. And I also thought it was ballsy because the audience would go in expecting Tom right away, and it's suddenly this other bunch of people that you don't even know and don't have any history with. And then that sequence goes south. I mean, and you then show Tom. I thought it was actually a good way to set up Ethan Hunt, is to not have him.
Right.
Just because that's what everybody expects now. So we wound up with a different sequence that had to do with Tom's team getting him out, just like they do in the finished version, except it was all of them basically going into the area where you talk to prisoners and then blowing that up and actually getting, blowing something up in order for Tom to escape. And I had a gag that I suggested that Benji was going to come in there, and when he talked, it would sound strange. And he actually had an artificial tongue that was made out of plastic explosives. And so he pulled it out of his mouth and smashed it up against the plastic or the bulletproof glass or whatever. And it blew a hole in it, and they got him out. So that's what we were prepared to go there and shoot. And we go there to shoot, and I'm sitting here trying to stage this. Paramount had delayed us scouting anything until Tom's deal was made, and that pinched our time, so we had no time to scout. And we're there, and I'm trying desperately to figure out how we've got this prison that's a defunct prison outside of Prague, about an hour outside of Prague, but it looks cool. I mean, it looks decrepit and weird, and it was an active prison like 20 years ago. So I'm there. I'm trying to set up where's this stuff going to happen. We find a room and we say, okay, here's where the da-da-da is. Okay, where's the prisoner? Where's the guard? and nothing worked. In other words, nothing physically worked in a way that would allow us to shoot what was in the script. And then we kept having to invent stuff. Well, how about if we put another guard there? And then that became problematic for the next shot. Well, if the other guard is here, then he can see blah, 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 blah. And it's obvious that, and pretty soon there were so many fixes on fixes to make this work that I just said, forget it. We're not doing this. And then on the spot, I mean, not that moment, but over the next night or so, we had the idea of controlling the doors. And Jim Bissell had to kind of quickly come up with a device that looked convincing and bulky enough to fit in that prison that controlled the doors. And once I had that, I wrote in some of the stuff with the Bogdan character, and Tom had this idea of a character that thought that Tom's character didn't know that he was English. And he called him Sergey, and that was in Tom's mind. And so we integrated that into it. And basically that sequence was kind of improvised out there. There were two guys that we had tested, or the Prague casting agent had just shown me a variety of actors that were in the area that might work for a part in the film. And I remembered two of them, but I just remembered them like, I didn't remember their names. I just said, there's a guy who kind of hangs in the doorway. So find that guy. And then there's another guy who, when she asks him what his name is, he said, my name is Mirai, da-da-da-da. I am the greatest actor in all of Prague, or something like that. and then he waits a beat and goes, no, it's not true. And I just remembered that. And I remembered his face and the fact that he had a weird sort of face that could look menacing at first glance and then look like, oh, he's a cupcake, I mean, he's a friendly guy, like a good a pet or something, he's like a favorite, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's funny and he's gregarious, and it could go either way, And so I said, find this guy who says he's the greatest actor, whatever it is. And I mean, we're moving. So they dig these guys up, and I have one guy be the first guy who wakes up, right? Who wakes up and finds his door open, the kind of guy that sneaks out. And he was the first guy, and then the other guy played Bogdan. And so the guy who played Bogdan, Mirai, he thought that, he came in for another audition in a sea of auditions 3 months before and thought, oh, that didn't pay off. And suddenly, somebody calls him on the phone, and like 2 days later, he's in this giant prison sequence with Tom Cruise. And he was just kind of going, what the hell? And then, but he was great, right? I loved his performance in the film. And he was so good that when Chris McQuarrie came on to straighten out some stuff in the script, he brought him back later in the film. And so he ended up being a fairly significant part, and it was out of nowhere. When we came to Prague to start filming the sequence, none of that sequence was in there. That was, I had the idea for the doors and all that stuff.
Yeah. It seems like the guy getting stuck in the door is a very Brad Bird gag.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think of that, but I guess so. Well, there was something funny about it. And I like it, and this is maybe an old classical movie thing, but I like it when characters are introduced in a way that's distinctive. And I thought it would be cool to hide Tom's face for a little while.
Yeah.
Even though everyone knows it's Tom, and everyone knows what Tom looks like, and he's not got, 3 missing teeth. There's no big surprise and when he turns around. But I thought, if we withhold his face and for the close-up part, at a pivotal moment, which is where he decides to go back and get this guy.
Yeah.
I thought that gives his character an introduction.
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know?
it's such a great entrance.
Yeah.
And I love that he's not just that he's bouncing the rock off the wall back to himself, he's bouncing it off 2 walls and then back to himself.
Right.
It's
Right. And of
so
course,
great.
Tom loved that right away when I pitched that idea. I said, hey, what about if you were throwing, and it took him like 2 seconds. He just points at me and goes, Cooler King. And I go, yeah, the Cooler King. Right? Steve McQueen from Great Escape. So, but we like that he was doing it with a rock that has been rounded because he's been doing it so much.
Yeah.
Was
that an ILM rock?
Yeah. You obviously... but I had it. An idea I had is that when he hears the music, he puts the rock back into place in the wall. He slides it into
let's
place.
set a little spot for it.
Yeah.
That's where he keeps his rock.
That's right.
You obviously love 60s spy stuff, as evidenced in Incredibles. But
Yeah.
Charles loves the original show, too. So we were curious what
you don't love the original show, I guess.
I like the original show, but it's not my favorite. But what was your relationship with the original show?
I saw it when it was on TV. When I was a
it wasn't
kid.
like a huge influence or anything.
I really liked it when it was on.
Okay.
I liked the earlier Martin Balsam sort of episodes more than later.
Okay.
But
Dan Briggs, the first season is awesome.
Yeah. Well, I liked it, but it's kind of better when you're doing something like this. Then it's better to just remember what you liked about it than it is to go back and look at episodes.
Right.
Because if I started to go back and look at episodes and I thought, well, this is a little more TV-ish and cheesy than I remember.
Yeah.
And, not to say that there weren't great episodes, but I didn't hunt for them. Yeah. I very quickly went, no, I'm going to go on what I remember them being like when I was a kid. And that's what's going to flavor the film. Because then it's about, how when you're a kid and you're at grade school and the halls look enormous and you go, oh, yeah, man, our school was huge. And then you go back like 10 years later and it seems tiny.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? I was living in a Hobbit school, What was going on? That's your memory is flavors stuff with all this great. And sometimes things hold up beautifully. Wizard of Oz is still a great film. Even though I've seen it 1 billion times, it still charms me, But I think that if you're going for the feeling of something, it's better to just rely on the impression that it made rather than the specifics of it.
Okay. Charles, you want to talk about Dubai? Should we get into Dubai?
Yeah, can we talk about Dubai?
Sure. You make it sound like
it's a big deal.
In Dubai stays in Dubai.
Well, McCory, he's joking. He says he's mad at you because there's no way to ever top the Dubai sequence. Just the whole thing, not just the Burj, but the whole. He's got a big smile on his face right now.
Yeah.
So just wanted to talk about why does it work so well?
Well, it actually starts, I think, with the concept of the 2 floors over each other, and that was in the original script that Andre and Josh wrote.
Both McQuarrie and Ellswood said you were obsessed with going through the floor.
Yes.
As well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard that idea, and that was in it when I first got involved with it, that was already in the script. I pitched that idea immediately. I said, because then you can see both groups, and the cleverness of the concept becomes visual, meaning that they're directly over each other, and it's identical rooms, and an identical scenario happening in both rooms, and it's almost like 2 casts of a play.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was, Andre Nemec and Josh Applebaum had that idea. And it's one of the things that made me want to do the movie. It's probably the thing, if I was to say a point where I just went, that's too fucking cool. I'm in, that idea of 2 halves of a legitimate transaction are happening, but they're not joined. One half imposters on one floor and one half imposters on the bottom floor. So that got me in right away. And then it, they had I think they were doing something. Brian Burke and JJ were in Dubai for some reason, I think for Star Trek or something. I don't know whether they were promoting it there or something, but they saw the Burj and they said, we should do something with that. So one of the things that was already in place when I got involved, I kept bugging JJ for a script and he kept kind of hiding from me. It was like, I kept calling him and, oh, yeah, I'll get back to you, and then he wouldn't get back to me right away. And then I was at a party that he was at and I started trying to hunt him down at the party. Where you got me involved in this, when do I get to see a script? And he's like, he's like saying, oh, look over there. And then he's gone. So I'm hunting JJ at this party. I'm thinking, they've gotten me involved in this. I haven't seen a script yet. JJ keeps telling me there is a script, but acting strange when I bring it up, and, and it's like I was hunting him for his tax returns or something. And finally he breaks down and he goes, okay, there is a script. There are many scripts. Which one do you want to read? It's all of them and none of them, and I'm like, what do you mean? You got me in this under false pretenses. And then I find out that basically that's true of every single Mission Impossible film made to that point, that they all have a collection of ideas, but everything is in chaos and being worked on until the last second. And we were no different. We were exactly the same kind of crazed script troubles that every single other Mission Impossible film has had. And I guess it's that there's something about you're making, an adventure that's a mystery, then you yourself must be confused in that process somehow. I don't know what it is, but that's the way that they're made. Every single one of them, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all start action sequence first, it seems like. A list of sequences or heist thing.
Set pieces. Yeah. Which, Jurassic Park has done that way too. It's a way to make a movie. And the truth is you kind of want to fall in love with those set pieces because that's what's going to drive you to make the movie. You have to fall in love with those first because those are the big candy that get you suckered into something that's really complicated and hard. They're kind of the thing that keeps your eyes bright because you go, well, even though this is all screwed up, at least I get to do this sequence, because that's going to just be one of the greatest things ever. And that enthusiasm makes you do the grueling work to make it all connect together and make sense as best you can.
So was the Dubai sequence, like when you finally got a collection of...
Here's how that happened, is that they knew that they wanted a sequence that involved climbing on the Burj. And I was sitting there going, okay, that's really cool. I like that. I really like the floor switch idea, which didn't need the Burj. It could have been in any building.
Yeah.
Right.
But I really like that device. And I like the fact that the two scenarios were filled with half imposters on both floors. So I wanted to show how tall the building was. And I was thinking, we aren't going to be able to put people on that building. And it is the tallest in the world. How do we convey that in a shot? In other words, everyone gets that it's tall. But I want them to know it's ridiculously tall, right? And so I was thinking, well, if I show it poke above the clouds, and there's actually a shot that's sort of influenced by that in Incredibles 2, of that original notion.
I was going to say that, and that sort of looks like the Burj, the
well, it
tower.
kind of does.
Yeah.
But in any case, I wanted to show that it's a cloudy day below this thing, and then the upper half is up where only planes are, which is kind of true of the one in Dubai. The only thing that you see at that level once you get above a certain height are planes, Yeah. And so I thought, okay, that's a great way to show it. So I mentioned that to Jeffrey Chernoff, one of the producers, and he says, well, you know what it should be? It shouldn't be clouds. It should be a shamal. And I said, what's a shamal? And he said, it's these sandstorms that they get there every once in a while. And so I'm thinking, yeah, okay, that's cool. It's a sandstorm. and I kind of Google sandstorms, and some of them come in and it's a daytime, and within a minute, it's so dark it looks like it's the middle of the night. I mean, it goes from daytime to the middle of the night inside of a minute. And
Wow.
and so once I saw that, I went, no, you should have a chase scene in a shamal, because I thought one of my favorite things in movies is, of course, the sequence from North by Northwest, where it's the middle of the day, it's the most unthreatening looking atmosphere it could possibly be, because you can see off into infinity, and it's a road, and there's there's no people, and yet this thing comes in out of the blue, and suddenly the guy's in deep trouble, and it's the middle of nowhere, and I thought, what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is not having any visibility, even though it's the middle of the day. And I thought that's a great thing for a chase scene to have happen. So I started developing this chase scene in the sandstorm. And so once you do that, you have to set up the sandstorm, and you have to do it in a way that the audience doesn't feel is totally phony baloney, that a sandstorm just happens when the shit is hitting the fan on another story level, right? And so the way that I figured out we could do that is to have them remark that it's coming earlier on, but it's so far off that it's not a problem.
That shot that bends around him, like that you.
Yeah.
I love that you pan and move and show it that way. You don't cut.
That's
to
a
it.
phony door, by the way, that we had to build specifically to get that shot. That's
So the camera could have room to turn and see.
There's a wall there when the shot begins that we have to pull out by the end of the shot in order to get the shot.
That's so cool.
And I designed that shot because I wanted you to see him seeing the shamal.
Yeah.
That was to set up that the shamal was coming, and do it in a way that nobody's going to think anything of it, so that when it hits, nobody's going, well, that's convenient. Yeah. That the storm is happening right at the most intense point of the action scene.
Right.
But because we set up that it was coming, the audience totally accepts it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the cool things about movies and stuff, is that the audience will accept crazy information if you serve it up to them the right way.
Right.
If you don't, and it's really easy to not do that, if you don't, they just spit it out and hate you, But if you can serve it up and make it look delicious and, fit color-wise with everything else on the place setting and all this, they will gobble it right up and not have a problem. No one ever had a problem with the fact that the sandstorm hits at the most dramatic point that it possibly could. And it's a crazy idea.
Yeah. Well, it feels inevitable. I don't know, somehow when you watch.
Right.
I mean, it's as soon as it happens, you're like, oh, of course this is going to happen right now.
Yeah.
It totally works.
But there's enough other stuff happening that you kind of forget about the sandstorm. Yeah.
I think I've asked you this before, but now we really need to dig into this. Why does Hendrix disguise himself as the other guy? And how does he have the as Wistrom and have the seemingly IMF proprietary mask technology?
Well, I always thought the masks was kind of a, you do
a great job of undercutting the masks, because they don't ever use any in the movie.
It never works.
They keep trying.
Well, that was one of the ideas that I pitched. They said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to have the great gadgets, and I want to have them all fail."
Right.
Yeah. And so that's a running joke in the film, that the technology is a problem, not a solution.
Right.
Which works so well. And they went a little crazy with the masks in part 2 and 3. So it was a nice, like when we saw Ghost Protocol and the way that they like the masks, like the design, it's a Sid Mead design thing.
Right.
The mask creation.
But yours
thing.
has two.
Yours has two heads.
Two heads.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was they don't work. That great look from Paula Patton when she looks like it didn't work.
Yeah.
The mask didn't go through.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to make it look like an upgrade from the previous one and then have it fail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, And the glove technology fails and all that stuff. Well, that's another idea I had, was the Gecko Gloves.
Yeah.
And it's because the geckos have fibers that kind of pull out almost like quills on a porcupine, you know? They're tiny, but they kind of come out and allow them to grip on anything. And so I read something that was about how electricity could be used to do that. And it's not a thing, but it's close enough to being a thing that I thought, well, they might have a prototype, you know, and it's a prototype that sometimes works really well, and sometimes doesn't work at all. And I thought it was a funny character thing to have Simon's character always have complete faith in things that he knows, or have, you know, a certain percent chance of failure.
And it was the only stuff that they could kind of grab to. Right, because the IMF is shut down.
Right.
This is just
All
the
they
stuff
have is what's on the train.
on the train. Yeah,
Right.
Which
But the train car is really cool.
yeah.
You know, it's just,
Are the notes that the train makes the first 3 notes of the theme song?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, we were watching it recently. And it was like this, where Renner and Cruz are waiting for the train, and then they hear a train sound, and then they go, "That's our train." And when the last time I listened, it was like, "Oh, are those the first couple of notes from the Mission Impossible theme?
Well,
Is that why they know?"
It might have been. It's not my idea, but it might have been a sound idea. Yeah, it might have been a Rydstrom idea. Actually.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that we loved from the beginning are the different motifs and themes for that the theme goes through for each location.
Yeah.
Right.
Was that another sort of idea that you had come up with initially? Like the theme is going to have a different iteration for each sort of location?
Well, Giacchino is really good at that stuff. He kind of gets into sort of giddy psychological level of music. And, you know, music is almost like the oral equivalent of perfume or something. You know how if you smell a perfume, if it's a distinctive smell, suddenly you're in whatever place you were first when you smelled that smell, or if it was a location that you returned to a lot, it just is instant. That's what leitmotifs do in music. And there are infinite number of ways to take an identifying signature of music and adapt it in different ways. And he loved, you know, as I do, the original theme song. Again, it's one of the great ones. It almost seems too good for television. You know, I shouldn't say that, because there's a lot of great theme songs for television, but it's the kind of thing everyone knows that and everyone remembers it. So I think he's always looking for ways of making a movie, you know, kind of let those feelings intersect and drift in from another part of the movie.
Well, we have another very serious question about the locations too.
Sure.
The title cards, they don't seem like they were something that was always built in. They seem sort of last minute, because it just seems like you would have done something crazier with every time a title of a location comes up. Were those last minute? Did you have other ideas for title cards?
You mean the font?
Well, just the font.
People bitched about the font a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, the film was huge. It was shot on 5 continents. Give me a break, you know? Jesus.
It's not a condemnation.
No, I'm just saying you're touching a nerve, because there was shit on the internet about that.
Okay.
About my selection of a typeface. Like, it's apparently a very mundane typeface. And you know, I love typefaces. So I'm sensitive toward it, you know, and it's like now I feel like I failed on the typeface front, you know. The font front.
No.
Yeah, but yes, okay, I concede, all you niggly Twitter sphere people, that yes, we could have chosen a better typeface for that, but Jesus, you guys have no idea how big and complicated these things are. It's like somebody, you know, escaping from a war zone, and you going, you could have chosen better pants, you know. And so, you know what I mean?
The dancing water sequence in India. Very, very nerdy question, but was that inspired by the water outside of the Imagination Pavilion at Epcot?
The dancing
when
water.
you track the water.
No, it was not.
Okay.
It was just Jim Bissell found that location, which was a miracle, because we needed something that stood in for this Indian palace. And it was actually a hotel that hadn't opened yet. And that enabled us to have free use of the main entrance of it, which is what we used for the party. And they had that fountain there. And as we were filming the sequence, I watched this series of, it was like a 2-minute series of actions that happened in that water. And I started getting obsessed with somehow integrating it into a shot that connected Sidoroff with Ethan Hunt. There's a story behind it. I don't know if you want to go into it.
Oh, we do.
Okay. I'm watching that. We're shooting this sequence. We did not shoot it correctly because they got all these rich people in Dubai that were chosen for their looks, and they thought this would be quite entertaining to be in a big Mission Impossible movie, and I'll get dressed up and the camera will linger over me and we'll laugh about it later, And so this is what everybody in the room thinks. So very stupidly, I will say, in retrospect, we choose to do the close shots first, which is exactly the opposite of the way we should have done it. We should have shot all the shots wide of the room to get as many of the party goers in as possible, because we didn't factor in that over a couple of days, these people are not going to be so interested in being there. They started getting bored pretty quickly. At first, they were all trying to crowd into these kind of 2 shots where we're trying to focus on Paula and Anil Kapoor. And they're trying to pack into the back of the shots. And we're saying, would you guys back off a little bit? The scene actually isn't about you. It's about the 2 actors in the frame. And so by the time we were getting wide on the room, people were starting to not show up and leave and stuff because we weren't paying them for it.
Yeah.
They're just local rich people in Dubai who have other things to do that are more amusing to them than take 15 of them pretending to chat, at a party. So we were scrambling to hold together the room. Anyway, in the midst of all that, I'm seeing this fountain and I'm watching it do this stuff over and over again. And I'm starting to conceive this shot where I can use the water, the direction of the water, to follow one of the water things that's kind of jumping and, from one side of the fountain to the other, and follow it to the villain, right? The Sidoroff. So I start saying, look, we could lower the camera in the middle of the fountain, and there's enough room for the camera. And you just, at this point, you lower the camera down, and then you have 40 seconds to get the shot, and then pull it out before the water goes on the camera again, right?
Oh, cool.
And so I start doing this, and they're basically saying, yeah, we'll get to that. And so we shoot some more shots, and then I say, okay, are we ready to do the shot now? And they were going like, yeah, we'll get to it. And pretty soon I start to realize they're waiting to get to the end of the night, and then they're going to toss this shot. They're going to say it's too hard because what am I doing? I'm lowering a very expensive Panavision camera in the middle of this fountain with water all around it that somehow miraculously is not touching it. And so pretty soon I'm getting pissed because I want this shot, and I see that they're playing me.
Right.
They're pushing the shot to the end of the night, and then they're going to say, we don't have time for the shot. And so I go and I blow up, right? Because at this point, it's been a grueling shoot. It's late. It's the middle of the night. It's hard to make this movie. And I start going, well, shit, okay, you direct the film, right? I'm blowing up. It's my only meltdown in the film.
Right.
And Tom is on the other side of a gargantuan room, and like a dog who somehow can hear this whistle, his head snaps over, and he comes over. What's going on? What's going on? And I'm telling you, I got pissed, but I wasn't like making a giant scene. I was making a small scene, and somehow he heard it from way across, like a football field away, and he's over there in a second, like, what's going on? And I'm going, yeah, they won't give me the damn shot, and I know it'll work, and da-da-da, and I've been patient, I've been doing all the other shots, I want to do the shot. And Tom goes, well, let's do the fucking shot. And And he's just like, I can't believe anybody's resisting you on this. And suddenly every other person on the floor who's been resisting me goes, hey, all right, we're setting up for the shot. Because Tom said that, right? So that's an example. He had my back on that whole film. And the second that he got wind that I wasn't getting to do the shot that I wanted to do, he just made it happen like with a snap of a finger.
Yeah.
And that was really great. He was incredibly supportive. So we did the shot, and one of the guys that was fighting me a little bit was Robert Elswit, and I hate to admit this because, but Robert Elswit was actually a little bit right that probably the smarter way to shoot it would have been to shoot it without the fountain and add the fountain, because when the camera panned quickly enough to follow the water thing, you lost the specificity.
Specificity?
Yeah, you did it. Yeah, that's a tough one to say. Easy to read, tough to say. But of the shot, that the blur, the camera had to move fast enough that it kind of blurred the water a little bit. And it's in there and it works. But
is there a cut in the middle or no?
There is not.
I love that shot. I mean, it's so great. It's such an amazing way to use the geography to.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you think so.
A lot of people would just do it with a cut.
Had his doubts that he thought that the blur would lessen the effect of the shot, and he was actually right that it was a little softer in the film than what I was hoping for.
Right. It still works. It's an amazing shot.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, thank you.
It
was hard fought to get that shot.
We're glad that we have the balls to ask you about the water shot.
You said that you hung out with Cruise. You've said this a few times. You hung out with him and watched some movies before you made the movie. So what? Obviously he's a big film buff and.
Well, no, we didn't watch movies. We talked about movies.
Okay. So,
and we had all seen the movies and knew which part. It was like movie shorthand.
So what were some of the movies you had? What was
those
conversations
like me saying I want you to throw a rock here, and I didn't. He's instantly Cooler King,
right? And
I'm like, yeah, Cooler King. He not only has the film, but he has the name of the character,
right?
And it's like, so that's the way it is talking movies with him. Is he has a huge knowledge of him, and the other thing that was fun was he knows exactly the machinery of movies. Like, I would have a shot of him, like a close up that was composed in kind of a weird way, and I'm trying to set up the shot, and I'm lowering it, and I'm going, and I'm not able to describe it. My brain's getting tired or something, and I'm kind of going, and he goes, "What lens is it?" And I go, "It's a 40." And he adjusts his head instantly toward the lens.
Wow.
And bam, that's exactly it. That's what I want. But he just said, "What lens is it?" And I told him the lens, and he turns his head and raises his shoulder a certain way, and now it looks great.
Right.
Yeah. He just has that sort of knowledge.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, was it having him and McQuarrie and Elswit, did that sort of soften the blow at all of this enormous...
Well, it did. But, when we first started shooting, I had not done a live action film. And this is kind of like, I haven't played football before. Okay, and I'm in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And so I was look, I'd studied film a tremendous amount. I think that Tom could look at the sequences I'd done in animation and see that I composed shots in a certain way and my edits were a certain way. So I knew the language of film, but I hadn't had the experience of being on a set more. I had a little bit. I'd been a screenwriter for a movie. I wrote a live action episode of Amazing Stories that I storyboarded.
That you were also in? Because
I
I
was
rewatched
also
it.
in,
Yeah.
yes.
Scientist number 2?
Yes, Scientist number 2, my big acting debut. When they assign a number after your character, you know that you've made it. Guy with upset stomach number 3. Anyway, so what were we talking about?
You going live action.
Oh yeah. Okay. So we're kind of, we have to hurriedly scout the film because Paramount delayed giving us money to scout while they worked out some deal with Tom.
Right.
So they were being kind of hardball guys, and it ended up, to me, I was against it, and I was vocal about it with the head of the studio. I said, we're not doing this for fun. We're doing it to make the movie good. And so even if you decide to cancel the movie or whatever, you should let us, if you think you're going to make the movie, you should let us scout now because we're running out of time. We have to start shooting by da-da-da in order to make this Dubai for November. And, it's a complicated.
Yeah.
So I'm just hanging out. We're scouting in Prague, and I'm just taking in information from everybody. I'm not saying a lot, and I'm not asserting myself a lot. And the AD and Elswit take me out to dinner and say, well, look, we got to talk with you. And I'm like, well, what? And they're like, we're getting a little freaked out that this is going to be overwhelming for you once we start shooting. And I said, well, why? And they said, well, you will have to assert yourself and all this. And later I thought, well, right now, everyone I'm surrounded with has more experience in doing their jobs and the machine than I do. If you ask me what good filmmaking is, like what a nice edit is, how shots should be orchestrated, I can talk I can talk for days on that. But if you tell me what is the experience of running through a scene and all that, I haven't done it. So I'm all ears right now, and I intend to be all ears. They were worried that my personality was going to get mowed over by the process of the machinery. A lot of people do when they work on films that are this big and complicated. It's easy to get run over by the machine. But the second we started filming, I started asserting myself, because it's like, now we're into getting the shots that are going to make the film. Now I have a very strong opinion, and I do know what a 25 is versus a 40, and I can ask for the right lens and all of that. In fact, the fact that I had worked on 2 CG animation films rather than going from hand-drawn animation to live action was a helpful step, because in computer animation, the lenses mock real lenses.
Right.
And one thing, when I came to Pixar, I said, what is this lens? And they'd say, it's a 14. And I said, what would it be if it were an actual lens? And they would go, oh, and they'd do a bunch of math. And then they'd go, it would be between a 24 and a 25. And I'd go, why don't you call it a 24 or 25? Like the language of the entire world? Maybe that is what we should do, rather than some obscure number system that only you guys use.
Yeah.
And so
Did they switch?
they did eventually, but it was like hitting a dog on the nose with a rolled up newspaper and over again until the dog corrects its behavior. But I just kept saying translation, and they'd go, and then they hit their calculator, And pretty soon they got, so I would just say, I want this to be a 25, and they would make it a 25. And so what I'm saying is, going from three-dimensional CG animation to live action was an easier jump, because the language and what lenses do is the same. So once we started shooting, I had no problem asserting myself, because now we're making the movie. But until that time, I want to listen to what everybody's doing. I'm not asserting myself, because you're just telling me how the machine works. Once I know how the machine works, then I'm fine.
Yeah.
So in a way, it was upsetting to me, because I thought, oh, Jesus, am I screwing it up already? But once we started shooting, I didn't have any problem saying, no, not this, that.
Yeah.
And some people actually liked me more before, when I was malleable, because I had very specific things that I wanted.
Right.
And, people would sometimes go, well, okay, if you want that. And then they see the finished film and they see, oh, that actually makes sense.
Yeah. Did Elswit said that you watched Die Hard before you started, and some James Bond movies?
Well, I had seen them all.
I know. Well, I know. Obviously, you've seen it, but I mean, you watched together with him, or you discussed with him?
We discussed.
Okay.
Again, Robert's a guy who's seen a lot of films, so you don't have to. Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to change for our installment of the Mission Impossible is I wanted there to be more humor. I wanted it to be funnier. And I felt like there's a way to do that that does not come at the expense of action. You know, a lot of people think that if you have comedy in there, that you're going to take the sting away from the action. And both Raiders and Die Hard to me had humor in them, but they are balls out action movies that really are, I think, the best that have been done. And so I wanted that quality, that sort of rollicking quality, where it's the shorthand I had with Tom was I would mime eating popcorn voraciously with your eyes glued to the screen going, you know, and I'd say, you know what kind of thing I'm looking for? And then I'd mime like eating a big fistfuls of popcorn and shoving them into my face as I'm avidly watching whatever. And then Tom added like sucking on a giant Coke. He'd like finding the straw, you know, in your mouth. I'm going, you know, and that was our shorthand for like movie moments, you know,
Right.
where you're just crazy into it.
Yeah.
And he got a kick out of that. So that became our shorthand of like, this is what we're going for.
Were there certain James Bond movies that were more your favorites that you were thinking
Yeah,
about?
Goldfinger and From Russia with Love. And, you know, there's a fight in From Russia with Love that I love in the train car because it's a confined space and it's a vicious fight. And
Did that inspire the Paula Patton fight?
Yeah, to some
Yeah.
to a certain extent, sure, absolutely. And you know, we wanted a fight between two women that was as brutal as a fight between two guys. There's this sort of thing that men sometimes do with women fighting where they're like, you know, they call them cat fights or
Yeah.
something.
Right.
And we wanted to do one that was as legit as any guy fight. And you know, Paula trained quite a bit for it beforehand because she wanted to really be convincing. And it's like, you do not want to fight this woman. She's going to take you down, right?
Yeah.
And then we found Leia Seydoux, which we thought was just like this gold find, you know. And we had it designed so that the stunt woman would be doing a lot of the stuff because we thought, well, maybe Leia's not into it. But once Leia, she said, is Paula doing it? And we said, yeah, you know. But she's been training, and she's like, then give me training, you know. And you
That's
know,
awesome.
I want to do it. And so there's only one shot where it's not Leia, and it's where she breaks through the table.
Right.
And that is the stunt woman. That's the only. It takes like a second. And it's over, and everything else in the fight is Leia.
Wow.
And she had this, you know, really intensive training too. And the whole thing is we wanted to have a different fighting style with them. Whereas Paula is the highly trained, you know, agent fighting style, like very by the book, whereas Leia's style is more like a street fighter. You know, somebody who's probably had, even though she's pretty, she's probably had a rough time growing up. And her fighting style is more just grabbing anything. And, you know, it's probably not quite as proper as Paula's style. And you know, she grabs a corkscrew at one point and jams it between her fist. And like, that's a real street fighter sort of move. So I enjoyed doing that. That was fun to shoot because it was a little more handheldy, and I wanted it to be that way than some of the other fights. And I think it's a really good fight.
One thing that, I don't know how much of this we can talk about, but another thing that changed while you were making this movie.
Elswit mentioned this.
Okay, I was going to mention this. This was supposed to be Tom's sort of swan song. And there was a lot of massaging done by McQuarrie and I know Lindelof. And did you have a philosophy on this? I mean,
well, it never was to me.
Okay.
You know, I sort of knew that. I mean, I heard that, but it was almost like an alternate narrative to the reality that I was in. To me, it was a ridiculous argument because you spend 2 seconds with Tom, you realize he looks great, he's beyond fit. He has probably never been not fit in his entire life. And so he looks 15 years younger than he is, and he can run faster than a lot of 30-year-olds, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I guess on paper he's had a long career, but it had no bearing on what I saw. So for me, he was always the star of the movie. I did hear that Paramount was, because the previous mission had not done as well at the box office, I think they were thinking that was somehow Tom was, burning out on the role or something ridiculous. But you see the JJ movie, to me, it's a good Mission Impossible movie, and Tom's great in it. And I didn't see it,
Yeah.
So to me, I never treated it as anything other than a Tom Cruise vehicle. However, one of the other things I wanted to do with my Mission Impossible was I wanted to have the team be a little more of a team. I felt like if I were to have a gentle criticism of some of the other films, it was that it was Tom and some other guys.
Yeah.
And some other guys that you will not care about.
Right.
And sometimes they were good actors, but they weren't given a lot to do. And Tom was never the guy saying, I have to do everything. He would often want to do things. If you came up with something cool, he would want his character to do it. But it was more like a puppy that just wants to go after the ball.
Right.
It's not that he's saying, I can't share the screen with anybody. So if I said, no, I think I want to give this to so-and-so and this to da-da-da, he was fine with it. In fact, he loved having the other characters take lines because it made them a credible team.
Yeah.
And I was wanting to make it more of a team film than other Mission Impossibles. And Tom was fine with it. He liked it. He would still, if there was a new idea, he would go, oh, can I do that?
Yeah.
But it was not a star saying I have to get all the good lines or anything. It was more like, it's more like if a ball is fumbled in football, the guy who loves football the most will scramble over people to jump on the ball. Right. And it's just, he's so enthused about making movies that he just wants to grab the ball.
Yeah.
But he's not, if you just say, "Lo, let's do it," he's like, "Oh, great." He's super easy to work with. Yeah. But he also is demanding. You have to be on your game. He expects everyone to have done their homework and everyone to move sharp. And that's the way these movies get made for a price, is they're big movies. And he runs a very tight set. But that for me, that was a huge advantage. I felt like I lucked out having my first live action film be with Tom Cruise, because not only does he run a tight ship and is a great guy to collaborate with, but he also is willing to do something like swing off a building that is halfway up the building is as tall as the Empire State Building. It's almost twice as tall as the Empire State Building, and that's him. That's not somebody else.
Well, you were the one that added the line about the syndicate at the end of the movie.
Yes.
Were you surprised to see McQuarrie take that ball with 5? And
where did that come from? That idea to bring that in there? Obviously, it's from the show.
Yeah. Chris came on the film after we had done a lot of the big sequences, and we kept saying, well, who did X, or how does this relate to Y? And everybody go, I don't know. We'll figure it out in Vancouver. In other words, all the connective tissue was being shot in sound stages in Vancouver. And so we kept kicking the can down the road. And pretty soon I was screwed because I don't know what to tell actors. Renner was like, do I hate her? Do I want to make love to her? What am I doing? And I'm like, it'll all make sense later. Just have faith, young Jedi, or whatever, I was starting to say, I can't keep doing this. I have to know the answer to this stuff, right? And so we brought McQuarrie in, and McQuarrie had this very pragmatic approach of why do we need to keep this a mystery? Why? In other words, we keep adding, every time we ask a question, we answer it with more questions. He said, eventually the audience is going to tune us out, and we don't want that. So why, and I'd say, why do we need to keep this question, the answer to this question, a mystery? Just answer the question. And I was like, great. We started doing that, and suddenly I knew it became very clear how to direct these scenes again, because this is no longer a mystery. The answer to that question is this, and now we're proposing a new question, but we've cleared the decks so that new question can be asked. And there's a really funny photograph that I took on the set, and it was in the hotel room in Dubai, which was a set. And on there was a bed that was in one of the was in the hotel bedroom in the movie, and McQuarrie is leaning up against the pillow like he's sitting on the bed. I mean, he is sitting on the bed, but it's the set bed, and he's writing on his computer. And on the end of the bed are two producers stressing out over what he's writing, like how to make it work in the schedule with the money that we have. And I called the photo cause and effect. It's like he's very comfortably nestled into the pillows writing away. And then these two guys are sitting just completely angsting on the end of the bed. It was like watching an idea be born and then cause somebody pain, like passing a stone or something, But he came in and worked for a few weeks and did some good simplifying and all of that. But I also want to say that Andre and Josh did the heavy lifting of a lot of the stuff that got involved, and they came back and did more writing when Chris had left, because there were some issues with some of the stuff that Chris had done for the climax that they said, well, you need to answer this, and so it's like, that's fine, they certainly did the heavy lifting and deserved a lot of credit for that movie. But Chris also came in and did some very smart rewriting. And, I did some writing on the film too, and Damon Lindelof's did some writing. I didn't do enough to get a credit, but I wrote. There are lines that I wrote scattered through the film. There's parts where I simplified. I remember there was a big scene with Sidoroff where he was asking these questions of Tom when he came in at the end after Tom is on the ground and he's stopped the missile and all this. There was this big long scene of like, well, I knew that you had come to the blah, blah, blah. And I said, he's just crashed into the ground. He's not going to want to talk.
Yeah.
But this is like right before we're filming it. So I'm cutting lines. This is a half hour before we're filming it. Yeah. And I just proposed to Tom. I sat down with Tom and I said, why don't we give all the talking to Sidoroff and have you just kind of, most you can do is nod.
Yeah.
And then have him ask hospital.
Yeah.
And then have him just go, yes.
Yeah.
Hospital.
It's got that Die Hard, you're talking about with Die Hard and Raiders of the Lost Ark, with the hero really going through, you really feel how hurt they are at the end.
Well, it was worse at one point. I wanted him to break his leg and actually have the bone of his leg when he was crawling around. I wanted him to have a broken leg and do it with an effect, put a little blue screen leg and have him drag it and then have ILM. It'd be like one of those Joe Theismann kind of, you don't want to look at it kind of things. But Tom didn't want him to be in a cast in the last scene. And I kind of went, okay, that makes sense. So we do the sequence, but he just didn't break the leg.
Right.
But he does make the leg kind of useless, and he has to drag it around.
Yeah.
So
he's in the car because the car like clips him. You feel that ankle. You're like,
yeah. So that was another scene that they didn't know how it fit or what it was, but they said there are these car parks in Germany that are automated, and we want to do something in a car park. But that's all they had, was we want to do something at the end in a car park.
Yeah.
So, but that's the kind of challenge that I like. It's like, okay, what is that? How does it go? How do you have a fight between this guy and Tom Cruise when Tom Cruise can clearly outrun this guy? So the answer is, he catches him, and still the fight gets brutal,
Yeah.
And
Well, it feels like it's out of a silent movie. It's like a beautifully orchestrated sequence, though. It feels
Well,
like Harold Lloyd. I mean,
that's what it's meant to be, is a nasty Harold Lloyd.
Was there a specific Harold Lloyd movie or anything you were thinking
Well,
of for
the
that?
obvious one is Safety Last, but Harold Lloyd was a physical in a different way than Keaton and Chaplin. He maybe wasn't quite as adept at mime, but he was really good at creating scenarios that were dangerous and or looked dangerous, and getting the most out of them. And nobody disputes that Chaplin and Keaton are a tier above him, but Harold Lloyd is not in the discussion as much as he should be, because he made some really good movies and he's got a very distinctive sort of thing. And the Safety Last is probably the obvious one. But we did that a little more on the Burge, with the glove kind of hanging on, and him discovering the glove. That's kind of Chuck Jones too, know.
The glove coming back.
But so the car park is meant to be more of a vicious fight, but it's meant to be very cinematic, and if you turn off the sound, it works just fine, I think. Which is a good test for a sequence, by the way, is if you can pull it off without sound. If the audience isn't confused about what's happening without sound, then you're in a good place.
Yeah.
Shit, well, we need to wrap up and let you move on with your day, but we always ask.
Oh no, you can go a little more.
Okay. We wanted to ask about the villain, about Hendrix. I think that it seems like he went through a lot of changes specifically,
or at least cut down.
His motivation isn't quite there. I mean, what was the initial,
Well, we shot stuff. We shot more scenes with him, but they didn't pan out very well. Which happens on all movies, where you shoot something with something in mind, and then you edit it together, and it doesn't quite hold its weight when you have the other scenes around it. So we ended up paring him back. He's a very nice actor, no longer with us, named Michael Nyquist, and he was in the original version of
Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
He's the villain in the first John Wick. He's really great in that.
Yeah. No, he was a wonderful actor, and he was certainly game on this. And he had a fear of heights, and yet we had him jumping down on these things in the car park, and he was game. He did it, but he really was like, oh, please don't make me do this. And we're like, come on, man, you're the villain, you got to bring it. But originally that was a bigger. The character had more scenes, and it had more to do with him going mad from, I forget what they call it.
Oh, that's right, because he was doing scenarios for Russia and America, and he started to go crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting idea, but we never got there in terms of pulling it off in the script. When we talked about it, it sounded great, but we never were able to translate it to scenes that worked. And we had some really interesting ideas, and there was this place that we were going to shoot at outside Prague that had, it was like a mansion that had a giant floor that was checkered marble, and it looked like a chess board. And we were going to have a key scene of him talking in this room, and have the subtext be that he's all about chess. And again, you start talking about it this way, it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And yet, for one reason or another, because you just start making these movies, and you've answered some questions, you haven't answered others, and you're you're trusting that you're going to come up with answers by the time that you need to in order to pull it off. And, the last scene in the film was shot where he's sitting with the members of his team and having a beer. And the first version of it that we shot on the set, it was just kind of Ethan. It was a very strange pep talk, and I kind of talked Tom out of it. I mean, we shot it, but I felt that it didn't work, because Tom was essentially pep talking the team by saying how it was going to wreck their lives. You know, I mean, he was describing something like, yeah, you won't be able to have personal relationships, or you won't have da 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 da. And it was done, it was nicely written. It sounded sort of heroic, but if you kind of stopped and thought about it, he's basically painting a very bleak picture about their lives, and yet they're strangely moved by it. Like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the best we could do by the point that we had to shoot it. And we even had a conversation of not shooting it, getting the scene right, and then bringing people back together. But Tom, who's done a million movies, said, you want to have something in the can, because you don't know what's going to happen down the line. And even if it doesn't entirely work, you have something, you know? And so that made sense to me. And so we shot it. And then Tom said, I think this is going to work. And I said, I think it'll work too. I think we'll get through the audience screening and they'll like it. I said, I'm not happy with it yet. We have these holes, this, and this. And I think we can fix these, you know. And Tom says, well, let's screen it first and see how it goes. I said, it's going to go well, but that doesn't change the fact that, you know, I said, 20% of the audience is going to be kind of where I am right now and go, well, this doesn't hold up to thought. So we tested. It tested really well. Again, any other studio would have been happy with it, and Paramount was happy with it. But I said we could answer these questions without much reshoots. We should do them because now it's for us, right? We want to make it so that we like it. And Tom said, okay, you know, we figured out how to do it in the most Ed Woody, you know, if it wasn't on screen, there was nothing there, you know, so you'd go into just a shit warehouse that was going to be our soundstage for today and build enough of the set so that it looks like the set is behind Tom's head, but it literally is just a frame of the set, like a painting.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
you know. I mean, it's that much set is what I'm saying. Like a large painting, that's how much set there is. And if you move the camera 1 inch to the left or the right, the illusion's gone. So it was totally Ed Wood, right? But we got this very surgical list of things to fix. And it's kind of instructive. I would have to show you the film and say, this is what we changed here. But one shot could change the tenor of a scene and make the character a character that you liked rather than a character that looked like he was picking up his ball and going home, you know? And so it was little adjustments like that. And Damon rewrote the scene of, he rewrote the jet scene, and we shot it at the Santa Monica airport and added Dubai in the distance.
Oh, wow.
And did it with Tom's jet in the background.
Wow.
And
Let's see where
the
they said
producer, David Ellison's jet. Those were the two jets, you know. So they didn't charge us because it's their film, you know.
Is that when they're going to India? Like we're going
Right.
to India, that scene?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had filmed that scene a couple of times and never gotten it right. And Damon wrote that scene. And then Damon rewrote the scene where they're having beers. But we had to rewrite it so that we could use enough of the scene that we'd shot on the big set to convince the audience that they were seeing the big set. So we were shooting in this just decrepit little piece of, it looked like, you know, winos were collapsing in the alley. I mean, it was literally between freeways, and we could get it for $1.98. And we strung these lights and threw them out of focus to make them look kind of like the lights that were in the big scene. So it could not have been, if you saw where we were filming, you would be shocked. It was literally like some decrepit part of LA, and just through the camera lens, it kind of looked, like I said, but we had buildings in the background that were across the river that we lit up very expensively on our original shoot. That we don't have those buildings in the back. And some guy takes a piece of foam core and puts black gaffer's tape on it, and out of focus, it looks like a building. I mean, I was shocked. I was like, no, that's never gonna work, man. And then I look through the camera lens and I go, oh, okay, you know? So this thing is the cheapest possible thing we could do to fill in this very expensive movie. And the lines were very surgical, And when I cut it, we cut it in a way that we'd cut wide for a laugh or something like that to let the audience know, yep, we're still in the big expensive set. And so it was this really great piece of guerrilla filmmaking in terms of everybody rallying and giving just enough information for the shots to sit with the other shots. But the rewrite of the scene had to do with explaining Julia, and it had to do with Renner's character believing that Julia was dead and then seeing that she wasn't. And it was allowing their relationship to get a little bit repaired because, that was a tough thing to kind of smooth over.
Yeah.
So Damon did some very clever rewriting there. And we reshot the shot of Julia reacting to him so that she acknowledges seeing to him. The way we shot it in Vancouver, she never sees him. He watches her, but she never sees him. And it was cold and kind of sad. It was cold on her part back. And so we refilmed that with her seeing him and nodding so that she knows that he's there.
Right.
And that made it more romantic.
Yeah.
And so it was all these little surgical adjustments. And then I wrote the scene where they're on the train yard, and I wrote some of the guard stuff at the beginning with Bogdan and, please tell me that you have a plan and that stuff, Right. So I wrote things that are scattered throughout the movie. But the bulk of the movie is Josh and Andre. And then if the next biggest credit obviously goes to Chris McQuarrie because he did some key scenes, the one with the fog, the one where Renners puts the suitcase out the window, which amped up the pressure for the roll switch, which he rewrote a little bit, but they had conceived that scene, which to me was, like I said, one of those things that made me want to do the movie.
Yeah.
The syndicate idea, when you threw that line there in at the very end, did you remember that? Was that just a memory of the old show the syndicate that you had?
Somebody mentioned it, and I remember. Oh yeah, that was always the enemy in the show. I didn't remember it, but somebody brought it up, and we thought it would be good to mention. Did Chris write that? I think Chris might have written that. I don't remember.
He said it was your idea. McQuarrie said to us.
Oh well,
that the syndicate was your idea. I don't know.
Well, it was from I remembered it from somebody mentioned it from the show in reference to something else, and I thought, well, that would be handy if you're gonna throw the cookie of the next assignment.
Right.
That would be a handy thing to
Yeah,
to
it's
do.
kind of the Joker card at the end of that.
Yeah,
Batman
and then
Begins.
I love that he followed it up
Yeah.
with his movies. Yeah, it's really cool.
Can we talk about Tom Cruise's hair for a minute?
Sure.
We talk a lot about his
We
hair.
talk about a lot about his hair.
And we
His
found out
hair
from McQuarrie.
changes each movie.
Yeah, and this is, I think, the second longest after the second movie.
The John Woo.
Yeah. So was that always, were you a fan of Tom with this hair? I think it has a very nice kind of feathered look.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
beautiful.
we wanted to begin with him in prison, and that was an idea that existed before I came on it, and I liked it. There was also a feeling that he was in a rough spot in his career a little bit. Having him break out of a prison at the beginning of the movie was kind of like he's going to break out of all the nonsense that he'd been sort of caught up in, And there was a moment when we were making the film that we were talking about something, and I talked about talking to the press, and I said you can't just like tell them your feelings about everything, and he kind of looked at me and went, well, you can, but you'll get. I don't recommend it. And it was really funny. So I just think that in some ways that film, I think reminded people how vital of a force he is.
Yeah.
But for me, I heard talk about passing the franchise, but I didn't think of this film as passing the franchise.
Yeah.
To me, the argument was mooted the second you watch him do any of the film.
Yeah.
He still really got it, and he's this was 8 years ago, and he still holds the screen like a mofo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like for me, it was always a Tom film, and but I did believe in building up the team, and I actually think it is good for Tom's character that they are more fully realized characters. And I think Chris does that too, in the films since. Benji to me was a tremendous addition to the film. And when I came onto it, one of the things that JJ said is, that Benji, the character Simon Pegg played in the one that I did, and I went, yeah, that was great. He goes, well, he's going to be a part of the team on this, and I went, great.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to work with Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
So having his character become another important character to the series, to me, was a really smart move. And that was just one more reason for me to do the film. And getting a chance to work with Renner he's a fantastic actor. And having Paula prove her stuff as an action heroine, I think was a good move, and somebody should cash in on that. And quite frankly, also someone should do a action movie with Josh. We
love Josh.
He really is great in the opening. I was sad that we ended up cutting some of the big action stuff that he was going to do, but by the time we got to that stuff at the end of the schedule, we had exhausted, and then to be faced with another giant scene that was going to be very difficult and expensive to shoot. We felt like we had the movie at that point, and that the prison sequence was really a good way to start the movie. So I think that he has got the chops to definitely be an action hero on his own. And I hope that anyone that looks at that film can see that he could do one too.
Yeah.
And so, but for me, this was always Tom's film and Tom's franchise, and I was grateful for the opportunity to work with Tom.
All right, Charles, ask your hat question.
There's a hat you wear on set that we love, and we want to get this hat.
Do you have any extras in the attic?
Am I with the 4 dots? Because I assume you didn't have a title yet.
It was called. We called it Aries when we
right.
were shooting it. We came up with Ghost Protocol. I was with Josh and Andre in Dubai, and they said the studio wants to call it MI4, and Tom didn't want to call it MI4, and they didn't. Josh and Andre didn't want to call it MI4, so we were saying Mission Impossible something. And we came up with Ghost Protocol. It might have been Applebaum that came up with it, because it was mentioned at one point in the script, Ghost Protocol. And we thought, that's a cool name. So the hat, I would go to Bad Robot.
Okay.
They're the ones
All right,
that had the hat.
we're gonna do a Mission Impossible heist in there to get one of those. hats.
Yeah.
two of those.
Yeah, you
hats.
think that's cool with the 4?
We can share it back and forth.
Yeah, you need an E-screen.
Yeah.
Which we haven't talked about, by the way.
Yeah, where did that come from?
That was, again, an idea Josh and Andre had, but they were kind of vague about how it worked. And so I started going, well, the only thing I can think of is that it will take a measurements on a hallway and project it, but you can't have it work for everyone. It could only really work for one person's perspective.
Yeah.
And I said, if you give it that weakness, then I can accept the technology.
Right.
It's borderline not acceptable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, there's an episode of the old show where they do that gag with the screen, and it doesn't really, because the perspective wouldn't work. You would notice it was a screen.
And so I said, so it has to be at a distance, and it has to be from one person's perspective, and we have to understand that graphically in the film. And so they kind of went, well, how would that work? And I said, well, let's have it work, and then let's break it. And in the breaking of it, it'll explain why it doesn't work for more than one person. And so when another person enters the room, I said, let's have it flip out, because it doesn't know whose perspective to pick. And then we'll see the hallway shift perspective.
Yeah,
and
that's so cool.
Yeah, and everyone kind of nodded at me with this sort of half, foggy look on their face, like, I guess that'll work. And so while we were filming it, there was quite a bit of doubt from everybody except Tom and Simon. For some reason, those two guys were total believers.
Wow.
With all due respect to everyone on the set, and they're all brilliant people, there was a lot of not saying it doubt going around. It was pretty much you could cut it with a knife. And I was kind of rushing and saying, okay, now we need to go from the person down to the iPad where you can see this happening. And nothing's on the iPad. You know what I mean? So everybody had to suspend a tremendous amount of disbelief to believe that it was going to work. And our machine was nicely designed, but it didn't fit to the end of the hall. And it was kind of flopping around a lot. And, the first thing where it comes up in front of Tom, we had it practically work, but so many takes it didn't work. And there's shots of Tom looking as this thing kind of has a little spaz attack in front of him and then dies. So we literally, you had to get the shots together in order and then have ILM do a little work to smooth it out and make the machine look a little sturdier than it was. But once we got it in there with the sound design where you just hear the air conditioner, which makes you aware of everything being silent. If you have no sound, people don't read it as silence. They read it as somehow we have gone deaf. Whereas if you put a tiny bit of sound, then that is the sound of silence, is actually a little tiny bit of sound. And Gary Rydstrom and the wonderful geniuses at Skywalker Sound made a really nice sound mix in there, which I think helps the suspense of the sequence. But a lot of people kind of came up to me after the film was done and admitted to me that when we were filming it, they didn't think it was going to work in a million years.
Was Hendrix always in those scenes? That was something that you recognized like on second or third viewing, that he's always in the background. Was he there?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, was that okay? That wasn't like a
Yeah, no, I planned it that way.
Okay, yeah.
And I thought that's playing fair with the audience. And it's rewarding them for being observant.
Yeah.
And to have Tom not see it. There are sometimes people who advocate that the heroes are flawless, and I am not one of those guys. And sometimes I had to fight a little bit on this film to not have Tom's character know everything because, he's the hero. And it's like, yeah, but he's also mortal. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so the fact that most of the audience does not notice that Hendrix is there and waiting for Ethan to come through in order to get his timing right, that also says that conceivably Ethan could not notice him too.
Yeah.
Ethan, maybe doesn't know totally what he looks like at that point. Maybe they're not suspicious of him too much at that point. In other words, the fact that you don't notice it and the fact that Ethan doesn't notice it makes it feel like fair play.
Yeah.
And by the same token, I try to arrange shots so that something is hidden in the background and the audience sees it maybe a split second before Ethan does. Like the audience goes, he's there, and almost as if Ethan hears them, he will turn and go.
Yeah.
And that's all incredibly deliberate, because if you can orchestrate it to where the audience feels like they are the ones discovering stuff, and then the camera somehow reacts to their discovery, then it feels like a visceral movie experience. And so there are moments in the chase where the audience sees the character running away from camera less than a second, probably like 16 frames before Ethan does. And it's timed to be that way. I just think it makes the movie experience seem more like you're living that dream,
Right. And just quickly, sorry, I just want to ask about Luther. He came in last minute, right at the end.
Right.
Was that just a last second addition at the last scene?
It was. He was originally not designed to be in that movie because it was sort of a movie done on the fly.
Right.
Not the movie done on the fly, but meaning
the mission.
The mission is an improvised mission.
Right. He doesn't get to pick his team. Or
He doesn't have the wherewithal to get Luther and do everything by the book.
Right.
In other words, he's sprung out of prison without him knowing that he's going out. He just suddenly hears that music and knows that he's out.
Yeah.
But in his mind, he was intending to stay in the prison for another whatever period of time to complete what he's there for. So at the last minute, we thought it'd be really nice to have Luther in this scene. And McQuarrie came up with the bit where he digs into his pocket and pulls out a bird for Ethan and all that, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
And,
It's great to have him in every movie. So
and it was
really
good to
nice.
have Ving come up and do that.
We also love the idea of Ving always sort of having a scuba exercise. He's got to
Right.
go down
Yes,
to the bottom
that's
of
right.
Yeah.
Scuba Luther.
Yeah.
We're obsessed with the idea that he's a scuba expert, because in the Vatican sequence in 3, he's doing the scuba work.
Right.
And then in 4, he references that he was down at the bottom of the ocean fixing the the leftover
missile
had landed in
And he's
San
kind
Francisco.
of ragging on him for making him do it. you know?
Yeah.
Which I like because it makes it like a workplace thing. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, our last question is always, and if this is only if you're comfortable with it, but can you rank your favorite Mission Impossible movies? From
Or at least your top 3.
top 3.
I enjoy working in the film industry and staying friends with all filmmakers. And
Did
therefore,
you see Fallout?
Huh?
Did you see Fallout?
The new one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Did you
did.
see it in
I liked
IMAX?
it a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
mean, I saw Chris and Tom like 3 weeks ago or a month ago when shooting Top Gun.
Oh, yeah. McQuarrie told us.
mentioned
Yeah.
that he said just seen you on the set.
Yeah. So no, I still am in touch with those guys, and
That's
I
cool.
think they're great, and So I enjoy the Mission films.
Are you a big De Palma fan?
I am a De Palma fan. I think sometimes he goes over the top. Or there's
Yeah,
a
that's part of the
movie
fun,
called
though.
Yes, and that is part of the fun. And the Mission Impossible, I think one of the best sequences in the series is that one where he drops in the room and is
Yeah.
suspended. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that sequence is just about perfect.
Yeah.
And it's extended. It lasts like 15 minutes or
Yeah,
something
and it's
crazy.
like mostly silent for.
And-
it was like 9 minutes of silence. It's crazy.
Yes, which was inspiring to me to try to do the E-screen in silence.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
mine is a little more goofy than De Palma's. The gag of Benji, bending
Right.
down in front of the camera and suddenly
His
his
head up.
head
Oh,
fills
it's so
the
great.
hall.
Well, and then there's a part that you deleted too, where the guard gets so close to the screen. It's on the Blu-ray. Yeah,
Deleted scenes.
Yeah.
yeah. And you said too much.
Yeah. Well, we milked it more.
Yes.
We came out and milked it more with Simon's character, and it just was
Right.
like, nah.
Well, so there's a shot in the Dubai sequence where he's running from the sandstorm, and it's way up high, and he kind of goes underneath this building that emerges on the other side. And to
Right.
me, it looked like a shot from Blowout, which is a scene where the Jeep goes through and out
Oh,
the other
no,
side.
I-
I didn't know if it was a reference or anything for you.
No.
Okay.
No. That's interesting, though. It's the first I've heard of that.
So
No.
it's like a really, I don't know.
It was just a
It was a
geography
similar
shot.
structure of like
But
running
that
through
structure
into the other side.
is that structure next to the Burj? Because I actually visited the Burj.
It's not.
Okay, because I was looking for that
No,
building. Okay,
no.
you're playing fast and loose.
We are.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yes.
Hey, Cruz runs. When
Here's
he
where
runs,
I-
he can run fast
That's
and
right.
get far.
No, we're in the grand tradition of movie geography
Yeah.
being whatever you want it to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It is done for maximum popcorn crunching.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you
Enjoyment.
succeeded.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much
Love that
for
movie so much.
making a movie that inspired a now 35 episodes podcast. And
Wait, I wanted to talk about that shot.
talk about the
Oh,
shot.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, wow.
That is one of the few shots that isn't Tom.
Whoa.
And
This
people
is the
said,
helicopter shot?
people said, "Is that Tom doing all that stuff?" I said, "Well, there are 3 shots without Tom in the movie, and on 2 of them, I said together they last maybe 5 seconds of the movie, and 4 seconds of that is like that shot, and we filmed it with Tom running, and the camera kept drifting off because of the wind that day, drifting off the shot, so." It kept going off. The start position would be where we wanted. The end position would be not, and the person was not centered in the frame, and so we didn't get the shot, and it was expensive. You have to rent the helicopter. You have to get approval for the airspace. Blah blah blah, and I said to the producer, we have to do it again, and he's like, "Are you ready to spend this amount of money?" And it was considerable, and I said. It was like deeply painful, but I went, yes, we got to at least give it one more try because it's a big shot. It's a storytelling shot. You probably might want it in the trailer. I don't know, but it's one of those shots. We should do it. And so we got it, but Tom was filming the chase in the sand. We were cramped to get everything done before we got out of Dubai. And Tom was filming the sandstorm chase running in the sandstorm with second unit. And so it's not Tom in that high shot running.
Wow.
And it's, Tom would have been great. He probably would have been a little faster than the guy that we have. But that's not Tom in that shot. And the other two shots that are not Tom are him being hit, and in both shots, the stuntman was injured, and and those two shots together add up to maybe a second, since they're like 10 frames of Tom, but Tom is in the shot before it and the shot after it. All the shots that people believe are not Tom are Tom. And these are literally like inserts where we're dropping him on his back or something, and it's like, I can't do that with Tom.
Right.
Because if he lands slightly incorrectly, he's out we have to shut the movie down.
Right.
So we were right in not letting him do the two shots that he didn't do. And again, they are like 16 frames. It's like, it's over.
Yeah.
Like that. But in both cases, the stuntman, whose name is Casey, got injured,
Yeah.
And it was good that we didn't do it with Tom. But all the ones where he's swinging on the building and he's 10 miles high and all that stuff, that's all Tom. And that's the stuff that people believe we shot with, computer graphics or something. And it's not. It's Tom.
Yeah. That shot of him running now. So we did a count of all his running in each of the movies.
Yeah.
It's sort of not too scientific, but Ghost Protocol had by 1 second the most of Tom Cruise running. But now that shot does not have him running.
Oh, no, you cannot say that. You will not do that to me. I demand that you cut this from the program now, then. I want the longest Tom Cruise run.
Okay, it was Tom. It was
Tom. We shot the footage with Tom. Yeah.
It's amazing to see him running either away from or towards these like buggies that you rigged up.
Yeah.
Like him running like through the hallways of the Kremlin or what. I mean, it's just fascinating that he can run that fast.
Well,
and then you put these buggies in front or behind the biggest
have
star
to
in
be
the world.
faster than him.
Yeah.
And which is a challenge. But the other thing that's funny is whenever you film a running scene with Tom, if he's chasing somebody, you keep having to lengthen the distance that you start him from. Because he says, I'm going to run full out. And, because people will be able to tell if I'm not. Right? It'll look like I'm not running full out. So I've got to run full out because that's what the character would do. And so we'd put the other guy, 15, 20 yards ahead of Tom or whatever. And he'd go, I don't think it's enough. And I said, well, it's okay. We'll just do one. And he'll catch him in like 2 seconds. And he's got him. And so then the next take we'll do 30 yards. And he gets him. And then so you go, all right, 40 yards, and we had to almost cut around the fact that he was catching up every time.
Wow.
But that's what makes it compelling on screen is he looks like he's running with every fiber of his being, and that is what he's doing.
Yeah.
And what was funny was when we shot the sequence in the train yard, Renner was pretty fast himself. I think he ran track in high school. And so Tom and Renner, it was in the middle of the night and cold and all this stuff. And they were constantly doing these stretches and stuff. And it was just really funny to see these guys doing all this stuff, deep in the bends. And it was almost like they were in a track competition. Right? But they had to, catch up to this train and be able to press these buttons. And it was a long night, but the sequence turned out fun. Yeah.
That feels like a very Brad Bird moment as well.
Well, again, they're having, to deal with the, technology when they don't really want to be dealing with it.
Can you tell us the thing that you couldn't get through?
No, because I might be able to get it in another movie.
Okay,
Right.
All right.
It had to do with the character being drugged, though.
Okay.
And that's all I'll say.
Okay.
But it wasn't because they weren't willing to do it. It was because there was no way to get it to fit.
Right.
Okay.
But all of the other things that I wanted to get in the movie, I got in the movie. And that was part of the fun of doing that film was it was done with the attitude of like, you can make the spy film you want to see.
Yeah. Well, you certainly made the spy film that we wanted to see. So thank you so much, Brad, for accepting this mission. And you didn't do a commentary. I think that now we have a feature-length commentary track for the movie with this interview. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, the only last thing I wanted to say was it was a challenge to do the IMAX. And we originally thought this is really ambitious to try to shoot it on the real building. And we're probably going to have problems. So we should prepare to only have done 2 or 3 shots of the sequence on the actual building, because we don't know how hard it's going to be to move this camera. And when we first talked to them about doing it, we said we're going to need to bash out one of these double windows that are very expensive to put in. And they kind of gritted their teeth and then went, okay, you can bash out one window. Then as we got there, we kept getting bigger eyes. And they would say, can we do 3 more windows? And they'd go, all right, but you have to put them back exactly the way they were when you're done. And then we go, 10 more windows? We ended up breaking like 37 windows, these giant double pane windows, and just getting more and more shots. And we originally designed it so that we thought, the minimum we'll do like 4 shots. Maybe we'll be lucky to get 4 shots. And we ended up getting everything. And we just kept bashing out windows and going to different floors and finding different angles. And we ended up shooting damn near the whole thing on the building. We didn't do some close-ups where it's literally just his face in the sky, because there's no reason to do that on the real building. But all of the stuff that looks amazing is real.
Yeah, I couldn't believe I was watching some of the special features last night, and there's the part where he falls.
Yeah,
he loses his grip and falls. Was done on the building. I thought, because I saw at one point some picture of the set that you used probably just for those inserts or close-ups.
Yeah,
and I assumed that's where the fall had done with a green screen or something. That fall is really
that fall is real, and he
scary.
drops like 2 stories and then gets jerked, But everyone was extremely careful. He, when he does a stunt, he not only has a stunt team see what the problems are and explore everything, and then gets a full download on every aspect, and physically too. Like they'll have a setup of what the building will be like that's just done above pads, and say, when you get to this point, you're going to have to switch your weight to this side. I mean, they kind of suss it out for him. And then he practices it, and he practices it, and he practices it. So by the time he gets on the real building, he's as well prepared as you can be before getting there. And then he rehearses on the building and perfects it on the building. He also trains so that the muscles he's going to need for in a specific stunt, he is peaking for that thing on the day that they are filming.
Wow.
So it is as thorough or as like a person training for the Olympics. And whatever the stunt requires of him, his team of guys will be preparing his body to do that thing on that day. And so, when it comes time to do it, he's as professional as they come. And all the stuntmen say, if this movie star thing doesn't work out for him, he would be probably the best stuntman in the industry, because he not only knows how to do it physically, but then he sells it emotionally by giving you the expression or something that emotionally sells it. So when they demonstrate a stunt for me, they'd have the stuntman do it, and it would look pretty good, but I'd be there going, yeah, but it's not. And the stunt lead would always go, it's going to look a lot better with Tom. Meaning that not only does he do the stunt, but he also sells the stunt. He makes you feel like the character is in the situation emotionally.
Yeah.
And like Greg Smurs was the stunt lead, and he had this very laconic way of kind of talking about it, and you go, well, are we kind of worried about, I'm sitting here, having the star hanging on this little very thin wire, a mile up in the building, and he goes, oh, look, it's not like if you're only 3 stories above the ground, you're gonna die. So it's not you're gonna die anyway. So it's just you're gonna have more time to think about it on the way down. And I'm like, wow, these guys have a certain ethos that I can understand, but I cannot subscribe to. Yeah. So it was a good group of characters, and then we had another guy named Wire Eater, who was our consultant on guns and stuff, and he was actually part of the LA SWAT team, and got OJ out of his car, and like, you remember that thing in, was it North Hollywood, where the guys came out in body armor and were like that inspired the climax of Heat?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was involved in that too. So he was a guy that was actually involved in this stuff, and now he consults on movies, and they were very careful to make on the building, there was a yellow area, yellow tape was on the ground, and if you crossed into that area, and it was before you got to the window, quite a bit before, you had to wear a harness that was connected to a wire so that if you fell, it would go choop and stop you from falling. So all the camera people and all the crew people that were inside this yellow area were hooked up.
Right.
So everyone was very serious about it. But we were there, and on the floor, Tom was getting the feel for the actual space. So he's on the Burj, and we're kind of on the inside of the glass, just talking about, how we're going to shoot it and stuff. But it's not the day of the shoot, it's days before. And I'm sitting there. I know he's out there with the climbing consultant guy. And we're just talking. And all of a sudden we hear, woo! And Tom goes by outside, swinging way wide by. And then he makes a rough landing into one of the sides of the building. And you hear, bam! And we're like, oh my God, our star's dead. And then we hear Tom laughing. And like, and it's like, there was one point where we were in the middle of shooting this, and we're shooting it on IMAX, so it's physically, the cameras are huge, and they're hard to, maneuver and do these crane shots where you're going outside and all this stuff. And we also are shooting from a helicopter with IMAX. And so it all has to be orchestrated because there's only so much fuel that they can stay in the air for so long. And then they have to fly back to a place to get fuel. And the IMAX loads are short because this giant film, and it burns through it really fast because the frame size is so big. And so once they've shot 3 minutes, they have to go all the way back to put in a new camera because there's no way to do it inside the chopper. So all of this stuff is tremendously complex, and you've got walkie-talkies, and there's the stuntmen are talking to the camera people who are talking to the helicopter people who are talking to that, and it all has to be orchestrated. In the meantime, Tom is holding himself on position, clinging to the side of the thing, going, are we ready yet? And it's like crazy, right? So he's clinging to the side of the building, and it's on the corner of the building, and he's waiting to push off to this so that we can get one of those shots where he's floating out. And helicopters are readying, and they're constantly moving off their mark because of the breeze. So you can't start rolling until they're kind of on their mark and into position. And Tom has to hold. And meanwhile, he's cranked around enough with the harness that he has built into him that it's cutting off the blood to his leg. So if he doesn't push off within 10 or 15 seconds, he's not going to be able to push off hard enough to get out there and get the shot we need, right? And so he's like, are we ready? And he's holding onto the corner of the building, and down below him on the other side of the building is a deck with tourists who are looking up there and seeing Tom, like 20 feet above them, and they're like, that's Tom Cruise. Hey, Tom, say hi to my Aunt Mary. And they've got their little cell phone things shooting footage, and he's like, are we ready yet? And so this kind of madness was going on, and we're in the middle of filming. And of course, it took many days to film this whole sequence because we have to move all this stuff, and it's tough stuff to work. And at one point, it's in the middle of the night, And all of a sudden I wake up in like a cold sweat, like, ah! Because I realize the star of our film is like suspended by a tiny wire a mile above, and I'm allowing this to happen, And I'm like, what am I doing? This is insane, And then I thought, well, if it's insane for me, it's 3 times more insane for Tom. So if he's okay with it, I guess I'm okay with it.
Is it only one wire, or is there a backup wire, or is there?
No, there's one wire.
That's it, just one wire.
No, it's one wire, and it's not that wide. It's really strong. So
there's no backup, basically. If anything fails with that one wire,
right? And you have to, and
have a parachute
the only
or anything?
digital effect we did on those sequences is to digitally remove the one wire.
Right.
But in a lot of shots, you didn't see it because it's thin enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's kind of nerve-wracking. But, Tom was really cool with it. And finally, at one point, I'm like, what was it like out there? I said, now that we're done with it, it's over. What was it like to be alone up there waiting for equipment and stuff? And you're just a mile up hanging off this thing. And he went, oh, it's fun. And I said, no, you got to give me more than that. You can't say that. I know that's the way you deal with interviewers. I said, but this is me now, right? What was it like? And he stopped for about 20 seconds, and he was really kind of trying to remember it. And he said, it's very quiet. It's very peaceful. It's exciting, but it's also, you feel sort of privileged that you're in a spot that not a lot of people will ever experience. And he said, for me, it gave me peace. It was weird. It's like the word terror never entered into it. He was like, it's quiet. It's kind of beautiful. And it was kind of interesting to hear that from him,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Wow.
yeah, I loved doing the opening sequence to Dean Martin. I love cutting that with Paul Hirsch and getting it to work with the music the way it does. It almost feels like a musical sequence, even though we have burning mattresses being thrown by prisoners, And I loved orchestrating all those shots. It was really a blast for me to do it with real cameras, and DP is as gifted as Robert Elswit. And so I got to work with people whose work I'd admired, and it was a blast.
Yeah.
Well, it was a blast talking to you. Thank you
Great.
so much for accepting this mission, Brad.
You bet. Light that fuse.
And we're back. Listening to that, I think about spending that time with Brad Bird, how funny he was, and just how much it meant to us, and just a great day. I will say that.
Yeah.
A wonderful, wonderful day.
Just amazing.
Just a sweet, sweet guy who was so excited to talk about this movie, and it was just so much fun.
Yeah, it was so amazing to have him. We kept trying to wrap it up, and he keeps just wanting to tell us more. It was like we felt like we were imposing, but he just really wanted. It was so amazing to have him, want to talk to us about it. It was great.
Yeah, I think I've said this before. We were sitting on a couch across from a TV that had a cable box, so I was watching the clock, even more so than we do on Zoom. And I was like, oh my God, we got to get out of here. He's got shit to do. I think he was like, that was during the Oscar campaign for Incredibles 2. It was a lot, but he was just so awesome, and it meant the world to us. So I hope he knows that too.
Yeah. But please sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/lightthefuse. There's always bonus episodes every week if you sign up at the bonus content level. And check out our website, LightTheFusePodcast.com. If you look at the merch section, you can get linked to our TeePublic page, which has all of our shirts and magnets and pins and phone cases and laptop cases and other fun stuff. And then go to the episode guide and check out all the show notes for all of our episodes. There's always good stuff in there. And I want to give a special thank you to Friedrich Skaug Fagnus for this episode. Thank you, Friedrich. And also just want to credit our music composer, Kevin Blumenfeld, and our editor and mixer, Luke Burson.
Yes.
Looking forward to more episodes in the coming weeks. We hope everybody's having happy holidays. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcast@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.